A boat. In the desert. For 7,000 animals. When it's never rained, would you build it? Because that's exactly what God asked Noah to do. Not for a week, not for a year, for 120 years. While everyone who saw him thought he'd lost his mind. But here's what nobody tells you about this story. When you actually examine the engineering, the mathematics, the logistics, it works. Every single detail. This isn't just a children's story with a rainbow at the end. This is the most sophisticated rescue operation in human history. And it started with one impossible command. The world had become violent. Genesis chapter 6 describes a civilization so corrupt that God looked at what he'd created and regretted it. But there was one man. Genesis 6 verse 9 says Noah was righteous, blameless, a man who walked with God when no one else did. So God tells him something that must have sounded absolutely insane. Build an ark. Not a raft, not a canoe. A massive ocean-going vessel, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. To put that in perspective, that's longer than a football field, taller than a 4-story building. And here's the detail that makes this even more remarkable. It had never rained before. The world was watered by mist, by springs. The concept of rain falling from the sky did not exist yet. Imagine this scene. Noah starts building in the desert, far from any ocean. Year 1, year 10, year 50. His neighbors walk by every single day and see this massive boat taking shape in the middle of nowhere. They mocked him. They had to. Because from every logical perspective, Noah looked like a fool. But he kept building. Now let's talk about why this matters. Because skeptics love to point at this story and say it's impossible, fairy tale, myth. But the mathematics tell a different story. The ark had a volume of 1.5 million cubic feet. That's the equivalent of 450 railroad boxcars. This wasn't a bathtub with a roof. This was a barge, a massive, floating warehouse. In 1993, a team of Korean naval engineers decided to test the ark's design. They built scale models, put them in wave tanks, subjected them to the kind of storms that sink modern ships. The result? Perfect stability. The ratio of length to width to height that the Bible gives? It's optimal for surviving rough seas, better than many modern cargo ships. The ark wasn't designed for speed. It wasn't designed for navigation. It was designed for one thing: to float, to survive, to endure. And the engineering proves it would. But here's what most people miss about the logistics. How do you fit all those animals? The Bible never says millions. Genesis 6 verse 20 says 2 of every kind, not species, kinds. 1 canine kind, wolves, dogs, coyotes, foxes, they all came later through natural variation. 1 feline kind, lions, tigers, house cats, same thing. When you calculate it this way, the number drops dramatically. Most credible estimates land between 6,000 and 7,000 animals total. 7,000 sounds like a lot until you remember 1.5 million cubic feet of space. The math works. But here's the detail that changes everything. Noah didn't gather the animals. Think about that for a second. Imagine trying to track down and capture 7,000 animals from across the planet. Impossible. But Genesis 6 verse 20 says something most people skip right over. 2 of every kind will come to you. God brought them. Noah didn't go on a global safari. He didn't set traps. He didn't spend decades hunting. He built the ark, and when it was finished, they came. The text describes it almost casually. They arrived in pairs. They walked up the ramp. And then comes one of the most important verses in the entire account. Genesis 7, verse 16. Then the Lord shut him in. Not Noah, not his sons. God himself closed the door. Now here's the part nobody talks about. They were inside that ark for over a year. Most people think 40 days. That's how long it rained. But Genesis 7 and 8 give us the full timeline. 370 days. That's more than a year on a floating zoo. How did they survive? The Bible gives us clues. 3 decks. That's organization, separation, stability. A ventilation opening that ran around the entire top of the ark. 18 inches high. Continuous airflow. Food storage on the upper deck. Lighter cargo up high. Heavier animals below for balance. And here's the detail that makes sense of it all. Most of the animals were probably juveniles. Smaller, easier to manage. Still decades of life ahead of them to repopulate. Nothing about this required magic. It required planning, obedience, execution. God gave the blueprint. Noah built it to spec. And then it happened. A single drop. Then another. Genesis 7 verse 11 describes it in terrifying detail. The fountains of the deep burst open. Underground reservoirs, massive chambers of water beneath the earth's crust, exploded upward. And the floodgates of heaven opened. Water from below, water from above. The people who had mocked Noah for 120 years, they weren't laughing anymore. They ran, they climbed, they pounded on the hull of the ark. But the door was already closed, not by Noah's hand, by God's. Inside, 8 people and 7,000 animals. Outside, the end of the world as they knew it. The water rose, 15 cubits above the highest mountains. Everything that breathed air died. Everything. And the ark floated, because it was never just a boat. It was a rescue plan. For 40 days, the rain fell. For 150 days, the water covered the earth. And Noah waited, month after month, inside a wooden vessel, floating on a planet covered in water, with no land in sight. Can you imagine the faith that required? Not just to build it, but to sit inside it, in the dark, in the unknown, trusting that the same God who shut the door would open it again. And he did. Genesis 8, the water receded. The ark settled on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sent out a dove. It returned with an olive branch, fresh leaves. Life was returning. Now here's the question that matters. What if Noah had quit? Year 50. He's 70% done. His back hurts. His hands are calloused. Everyone still thinks he's crazy. What if he walked away? Year 90. He's an old man now. Still no rain. Still no flood. Still building. What if he stopped? Year 119. The ark is finished, but the sky is still blue. What if he said, I must have heard wrong? Most of us want confirmation before obedience. We want proof before we step out. We want the rain before we build the boat. But that's not how faith works. Faith means building something no one else understands. It's the career move that makes people question your judgment. the relationship you invest in when everyone says, walk away. The calling you can't explain because the words don't exist yet. The dream that makes logical sense to no one but you and God. You know what your arc is. It's that thing you're building in secret. That thing people look at sideways when you mention it. That obedience that's costing you time, money, reputation. Noah's neighbors thought he was insane for 120 years until the first raindrop fell. Then suddenly, the fool became the only sane man alive. Your rain is coming. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but the same God who told Noah to build is the same God who sent the flood. He doesn't give assignments without completion plans. So keep building. When your hands are tired, keep building. When the mockery gets loud, keep building. When you can't see the finish line, keep building. Because faithfulness isn't proven when the rain starts. Faithfulness is proven when the sky is still blue and you're still hammering. Genesis 9 ends with a rainbow. Not just pretty colors in the sky, a covenant, a promise. God saying, I see your obedience and I honor it. The size of your assignment doesn't determine whether God will show up. Your obedience does. Noah didn't have all the answers when he started. He didn't know how the animals would come. He didn't know when the rain would fall. He just knew God said, build. So he built. What's your arc? What's the impossible thing you're being called to build while everyone watches and wonders what you're doing? Name it. Say it out loud if you have to. Because here's the truth. Giants of faith don't look like giants while they're building. They look like fools until the rain starts. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what you're building. Not because I need to know, but because sometimes naming it gives you the strength to keep going. And if someone in your life is building their arc right now, facing the mockery, doubting if they heard right, send them this. It might be exactly what they need to pick up the hammer one more time. New video every Tuesday and Friday. We're telling the stories Sunday school left out. See you next time.